Yes, and they're all in the lobby, Lorraine.
Okay. So good morning, everyone. And we are now live streaming. So I'm going to call the meeting to order and welcome everyone. My name is Lorraine Cunningham, and I'd like to welcome you to TransLink September 2022 Open Board Meeting. Thank you all for joining us today in this virtual meeting. And I'll call the meeting to order. Just hold on here. I've lost something on my screen that I can't see. So just hold on. Sorry. I'd like to start by saying that we acknowledge, respect, and celebrate the Indigenous nations on whose territories we are fortunate to live, work, operate, and serve. We recognize that in planning and managing the region's transportation system, we have a role to play in supporting reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. September 30th is the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, and also known as Orange Shirt Day. This is a day of observation to recognize and honor the resiliency of the residential school survivors and pay respect to the children who never returned home to their families. And it is an opportunity to learn and reflect on the lasting impacts of the residential school system on Indigenous peoples in Canada. And today we are collectively showing our support by wearing our orange ribbons that we have on our lapels. And we also have our orange backgrounds. Before we begin the meeting, I'd like to thank Mayors Cote and Froese for their service on the TransLink board, as they will be retiring from their political life. And in so, they will be leaving the board of TransLink. So this is their last meeting today. We appreciate both of your dedication to building a region with sustainable transportation at the forefront. Let's begin our meeting with a new feature, and it's the Safety Minute, which will become a regular addition at TransLink's board meetings. TransLink and its operating companies are committed to the safety of its customers, employees, the public, and safety underlines all of our actions. This responsibility can be found within TransLink's mission, vision, values, and safety commitment, and in our second enterprise priority, ensuring state of good repair. And that statement says TransLink will proactively manage and maintain all assets in a state of good repair to ensure safety and reliability, optimize life cycle costs, and enhance the customer experience. We're continually focused on enhancing and growing our culture of safety, and will now be adding a safety moment at the beginning of our board meetings. Safety moments are a brief overview, 1 to 2 minutes long, covering a relevant safety topic, and include possible solutions to making a situation safe. And on that, I'd like to introduce Dorit Mason, our Director of Safety, Environment, and Emergency Management, who will present the first Safety Minute. Dorit?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And today I'd like to talk about pedestrian safety. We know that in the fall, people start going back to school. They're going back into the offices. More people are walking and taking transit. And we also know that the fall means that it's starting to get darker in the morning and in the evenings. And if you are a pedestrian, it's really important that you pay attention to your surroundings, that you make eye contact with drivers and cyclists to ensure that they see you. And then as it gets darker, consider wearing something reflective or lighter clothing. If you're driving or cycling, be prepared for the unexpected. You may not see the pedestrian that's dressed all in black that suddenly appears on the crosswalk. Make sure that you make eye contact with pedestrians so that you know that they see you, and really drive for the conditions. So as we're getting into the winter season and the fall, please think about safety as if you're a pedestrian or if you're a cyclist or a driver. Thank you very much.
Dora, thank you very much. And we really appreciate the reminders because they're so important for everybody. So let's proceed to the first speaker, item number 2 on our agenda, where we have a public delegations. And the first speaker that we'd like to welcome is Eileen Buchanan. Welcome, Eileen, and you have 5 minutes to make your presentation to the board. And we'll let you know if you're getting close to being out of time. So Eileen. Eileen, are you there? Jennifer, perhaps we should go to the second speaker if Eileen's having problems.
Sure. I think she might be muted, but we can do that.
Okay.
One
So the
moment.
next speaker, and then we can come back to Eileen when she's sorted out the technical issues, as I had earlier today. So Luke Solvang, are you with us? I don't hear Luke either. How about Nathan?
We've admitted Luke. Luke, can you hear us?
Oh, hello.
Hello.
Hi, it's Luke.
Oh, hi, Luke. Hi, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yes.
Yeah. Would you like me to speak?
Yes, please, go ahead. That would be great.
Okay. Well, here's my presentation.
Okay.
So, hi, directors. Thanks for having me today. This is about COVID and TransLink. You have already heard from people such as Dr. Ophelia Trolt of the Protect Our Province BC delegation much earlier this year and ignored the recommendations like our government ignored the letter from the BC Human Rights Commissioner. In the meantime, people have continued to get sick with COVID from their use of TransLink services since mask mandates dropped in March. BC reported that 7.1 people died of COVID a day in August 2022 compared to 6 deaths a week in August 2021. BC has had the highest provincial excess death rate during the pandemic's course. Dr. Terry Moriarty and her team estimate that Canada has underreported 70 to 90% of COVID deaths of people under 40. 80% of kids have been infected in BC, sending 600 plus children to hospital with COVID this year. Several children have died. We know that infections are occurring continuously in the population, and this will only escalate this fall without any of the previous mitigation measures. We know that reinfections are bad for you. Vaccines help, but do not offer guaranteed and lasting protection against coronaviruses. Long COVID rates are extremely high, and we will likely not see the full landscape of harm this virus is capable of in COVID survivors until it's too late for millions of people. In the short term, Canada specifically will probably kill tens of thousands more by continuing to do nothing in terms of mitigation. We now have clear evidence from across the world that transit has always been a source of transmission, and transit riders and staff are at elevated risk. In California, public transportation industries experience COVID outbreaks at a rate 5.2 times higher than the cross-industry average, and mortality rates 1.5 times higher than the cross-industry average. It's from the American CDC this August. We know that transit ridership reflects inequalities in our society tied to class, income, race, and ability. So we have to ask ourselves now, who in our society is carrying that disease burden the heaviest in the context of travel and transportation? The 2020 Vancouver panel survey published last year, told us that 84% of Vancouver households with an income greater than 100K have access to a private vehicle compared to 56% of those with an income under 50K. And so all these factors are now setting us up for a pretty terrible season as we enter into fall and winter. So we're going to be entering a wait period with the knowledge that bus windows will shut, airflow in transit vehicles will decrease, and without masks or air filtration, COVID infection rates on TransLink property will go up. We don't collect data on this because they don't want to, but this can't be denied. Our 4 buses have the second highest ridership of TransLink's fleet and some of the highest reported CO2 concentration readings. We are now anticipating the immunity escaping BA 2.75.2 variant, along with a grab bag of other variants and variables as this fall wave picks up. We just don't know what will happen. And now Canada has just announced that masks will no longer be required on Canadian planes and trains as of October 1st. We are disassembling our mitigation measures. However, you at TransLink have some examples to look to if you want to change course and do what is in your reach to slow the spread of this terrible disease. The San Francisco Bay Area Regional Transit Authority recently said yes to a senior disability rights advocacy group who requested a mask requirement on SFR property. It's been hard to enforce, but it's certainly reducing aerosols and droplets, and they also have MERV filters going for them, which we do not. And so this is our request, as repeated earlier this year. Please ask all passengers to wear well-fitted N95 or equivalent respirator masks that meet NIOSH standards. These are now known to be the only effective options against airborne diseases like COVID. Please have masks available for those that show up without one. Install MERV 14 air filters in the entire transit fleet. This investment will show returns immediately and they'll last beyond the pandemic. And finally, monitor air quality in TransLink properties so we can have data and information and we can actually make decisions. So for closing remarks here, scientists, doctors, and civilians who've been telling the truth about the disease are not trying to assert some kind of moralizing theater over the rest of the population. We have simply been abandoned by a government that does not care to share information and does not care to tell the truth. We know that clean air and N95s work and will save life years and lives by reducing infections right now. We know we cannot, quote unquote, personal responsibility our way out of an airborne pandemic. We remind you that public health orders are a minimum, not a maximum, and right now officials have set the bar to nothing. And so maybe you at TransLink can't enforce a mask requirement, but it should at least be an expectation. In the TransLink microcosm, show our society by example what real pandemic mitigation looks like, because this is not going away anytime soon. We need to stop living in denial and we need to adapt to uncomfortable realities. We should not follow the orders of authorities who abandon the precautionary principle and enforce a de facto eugenics program upon the general population. We now believe TransLink is fully complicit in this by ignoring the science, ignoring the disabled and the marginalized, and ignoring COVID survivors. Respirators will be a protective tool now that we will all have to use for an age of pandemics and an age of wildfires. It will soon be as normal as baseball caps, sunglasses, and earplugs. We're asking you to be brave, follow the science, get ahead of the curve, and start saving lives. And if you don't, let this be another small record for when decision makers are held to account for the death, injury, and disability that was enabled. Many of us will be there to remind them and hold up the scientific papers and the transcripts of warnings like this presentation today, and we'll tell them that ignorance will not be a valid excuse. And as a final postscript, please do something about the harassment of mask wearers on transit. It is out of control. We don't know what to do. We have been abandoned. TransLink employees agree with us, and it's being covered up. It's unacceptable. Thanks for talking to me today.
Thanks very much, Luke, for your presentation. Appreciate your comments and suggestions. So we're going to move to our next speaker now, which is Eileen Buchanan. And Eileen, I know you're in the waiting room, so hopefully we can hear you now. Eileen? I don't see or hear Eileen.
Hello.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
Welcome,
Oh,
Eileen.
good.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, well, the floor is for yours.
you.
You have 5 minutes, so please try and keep within that
Thank you.
time. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. My name is Eileen Buchanan. I live on a cliff above a small seaside village in West Vancouver. Now, I'm exaggerating slightly just to make the picture clear for everybody. We have a lot of small roads. One of them runs about 20 blocks halfway up the face of the cliff. And of course, everybody wants it. Cars, trucks, buses, wheelchairs, cyclists, pedestrians, school children. And guess who wins? Because it's on the cliff and not on the beaches, and because it's near the schools and not near the restaurants, its people struggle more than the ones who live in the $30 million homes a few blocks away. And they don't have as much influence. Some don't speak English, some need walkers, some push strollers, and many don't have much confidence or influence or any way of getting together in a group. For example, they may not speak the same language. So right now, the buses are running empty on our best flat cycling street. And the mums with strollers are forced to walk in the blackberries. The lady with a bad leg can't use the bus because she twisted her ankle while trying to get there. The man with cerebral palsy can't leave his house because he can't walk on the pavement anymore. The elderly ladies you drop off with bags of groceries have to walk 3 blocks up the cliff to get home. We're getting lots of accidents. Last August, a bus killed a lady in a crosswalk a few blocks away by the grocery store. In May, the fridge repairman collided with a lawyer across the road by my driveway. In June, a 5-year-old cyclist was almost killed by my driveway. In July, a parked car was totaled a block away. In August, I stepped over hydro lines to pull a man out of a burning car. In September, a camper van went the wrong way on the upper levels highway and sent 6 to hospital. I haven't ever seen such chaos. I think the GPS systems are partially following transit's lead. I know the mayor and councillors are. That's what they said. They say, it's a bus route. We can't slow it down. I don't think sidewalks will help. We'd need wide sidewalks and buffers and space for parking and bike lanes and turning lanes and crosswalks and lights and roundabouts. We'd want a traffic engineer to design this. We have many vulnerable people and a small tax base. We just can't have children walking and cycling on a narrow sidewalk right beside speeding trucks and buses. It's just not safe. The pavement is 20 feet wide in total, with some edges only 3 feet. No sidewalks, no speed bumps, nothing. How do you fit fast trucks and buses that also speed and people from other areas rushing to work? What would you do with the driveways if you tried an upgrade? Elevators for the cars? And the elderly who don't have driveways? I thought traffic engineers would need to design these changes. These are local roads. They are not arterial. You can't just change a local road into an arterial by darkening a line on a map. So, for a bunch of reasons, we're asking that you please let the bicycles and pedestrians and school children have the flats, and you help with the hills. You can help carry the strollers and bicycles back up the hills from the grocery store and connect workers to the great bus service you have along the bottom of the cliff. You can leave the bus stops in the same place. Just turn your buses up, please, instead of sideways. Maybe you could even go all the way to the top into West Hill. And maybe you could think about your beeline along the highway above instead of using more flat space on the road below and allowing other cities to flood our neighborhoods with GHGs. We'd love to be able to cycle and walk again. It seems silly to tell everyone to walk and cycle, then run empty buses so we can't. I'm a nurse, educator, and researcher with 20 years of experience managing a civil engineering firm, 4 children, and 2 aging parents I cared for at home. I'd love to work with you on behalf of individual neighborhoods in West Vancouver to make transit more effective. We need to consider our damaging unintended outcomes, our equal justice principles, climate, neighborhoods, aging, a bunch of other factors. Thank you so much for your time. Don't hesitate to call me, and I'll give the floor back to you.
Thank you so much, Eileen. I really appreciate your comments. So our last speaker for the day is Nathan Dodadovich. Nathan, are you there?
Neighborhood, aging, a bunch of other factors. Thank you so much for your time. Don't hesitate to call me, and I'll give the floor back to you. Thank you so much,
Nathan, are you there? Can we hear you?
Hello.
Hello, Nathan. Welcome.
Yeah.
So So Nathan,
do you hear me?
we can hear you. Now you have, Nathan, you have 5 minutes, and I see you have a few topics that you wanted to address with us. So the floor is yours, but please try and keep it within the 5 minutes. Okay, Nathan?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much,
Okay,
Chair and members of the board. We need your staff to start providing complete reports on our transit system. Your agenda today is only 51 pages compared to 1,000 or even 2,000 pages in other transit boards across the country. Most boards also have open committee meetings, which TransLink committee meetings are closed. Why should I submit FOI requests when it is standard information that all transit systems provide? Coast Mountain Bus Company, CMBC, does not provide the information. On itself and its subsidiaries, First Transit and West Vancouver Municipal Transit, they provide reports to Statistics Canada every month. See page 19 out of 51 on your agenda, where Coast Mountain Bus Company only provides the handy-dart ridership, but not the conventional ridership. In many other transit systems, they post daily ridership every day. You can look it up on their website and see it. On the previous page, page 18 out of 51, you have a list of new and replacement orders of buses. However, TransLink is way behind other transit systems in electrification of our bus fleet. We need the BC government to step in and order 1,000 new extra electric buses over 3 years. TransLink has failed us, and maybe the BC government will make changes like they recently did with BC ferries. The next item is ridership recovery, page 34 out of 51. This report is dated August 30th. Since then, we've seen way more buses going by displaying the sign, "Sorry, bus full." Ridership has increased in all transit systems in Canada since the start of school after Labor Day. Some cities report up to 15% increase in ridership. It is the same here, but nobody is reporting about it, but there are many complaints about pass-ups and so forth by many regular transit users. TransLink is discouraging riders by not providing enough service on all the busy routes. This will not be corrected till at least mid-2023, as it will take you so long to hire new bus drivers. And that's due to CMBC management fault for not hiring enough bus drivers since 2020. Many community shuttle bus drivers are changing to regular bus drivers, so there is way more cancellations of community shuttle trips. Depending on the actual route, some up to 50% of the trips have been canceled on some of these small community shuttle bus routes. After the civic election, up to 50% of the members of the Mayor's Council will be changed, and many will speak out, not like the present members who keep quiet. There'll be not too many unanimous votes like with the present Mayor's Council. And the board, the TransLink board, might get new marching orders, so maybe you get prepared for that. Thank you very much for listening to me. I think I've been busy in the right timing.
That's perfect, Nathan. And we really appreciate you coming and sharing your ideas with us. And we look forward to seeing and hearing from you in future meetings, because I know you're very engaged with TransLink and with the board, so we appreciate that. All right, so that completes the public delegations. So we're going to move to item number 3 on our agenda, which is our CEO report. And I'm going to turn the floor over to Kevin Quinn, who's going to provide his report. So Kevin.
Okay, thank you, Chair Cunningham, and good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. I want to thank Dorit for speaking about safety, a topic that is such a top priority for us here at TransLink and something that continues to be paramount in everything that we do. Next slide, please. As Chair Cunningham noted at the beginning of this meeting, this Friday, September 30th, is the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. And I would like to honor Indigenous peoples and communities impacted by the residential school systems, including survivors, those who never returned home, and their families. Learning about the painful truths of residential schools is such an important aspect of reconciliation with Indigenous peoples and future generations. And TransLink, for our part, continues to move forward with our reconciliation efforts, including initiating conversations with Indigenous nations to address a long-standing systemic barrier to bring transportation service options to reserve lands and improve service for Tsawwassen First Nation. We want to continue our efforts to increase cultural recognition through art and signage, which supports Indigenous cultural and language revitalization. And just last year, we unveiled the Burrard Chinook Sea Bus, showcasing just amazing art from Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh artists. TransLink continues to support initiatives, attend events, and really share resources to educate employees on current and historical events involving Indigenous peoples. This will be the first year we institute a single zone fare through a tariff amendment for National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, so Indigenous peoples and others can attend local events to honor those impacted by residential school systems. And further, we have initiated an Indigenous employee resource group this summer to create a safe and inclusive place for Indigenous employees to connect with peers and develop their professional network. We are at such a critical time in our relationship with Indigenous nations and peoples to ensure that we're seeing our commitments through. And we recognize that TransLink plays such an active role and needs to play an active role to work effectively in the pursuit of thriving and sustainable Indigenous communities. Next slide, please. I want to provide just a brief ridership update. Our customers are continuing to come back to the system. System-wide ridership is currently sitting at 77% recovery. And it's important to note that the comparator week in 2019 was actually the highest ridership that we saw that year. Further, weekend ridership continues to lead recovery, particularly in the Southeast subregion, which surpassed pre-COVID levels at 104% on Saturday and 102% on Sunday. We continue to lead ridership recovery amongst our peer agencies in North America. We know that when we create a great experience for our customers, they're more likely to not only return to use our services, but also tell their friends about it too. So this summer, we've been finding really new and innovative ways to really enhance the customer experience. Next slide, please. So based on customer requests for increased bike capacity to the ferries and the desire to support multimodal trips, we trialed a summer bike bus service. The 900 bike bus ran along the existing 620 route between Tsawwassen Ferry Terminal and Bridgeport Station, one of the most popular routes for our cycling customers. And overall, the bike bus was well received by customers and employees alike. Customers expressed their excitement for the new service and reported that the interior bike racks were simple and easy to use. And to just give you an idea of the program's success, during the pilot period between July 1 and September 5th, 3,089 passengers used the bus, and of those, 1,323 bikes were recorded. The top weekend was Canada Day weekend, with 172 bikes carried, followed by the August 19th to 21st weekend, where we carried 167 bikes. And the 900 bike bus is, I think, a great example of how integrating transit with another form of sustainable transportation can really meet the needs of our customers. Next slide, please. As you know, on June 15th, we put out a call for our new transit volunteer program to help customers connect with communities and help them have the best possible experience using the transit system. Within the first week, we exceeded expectations with over 170 applications for the program. There are currently 60 active volunteers with 17 new volunteers trained up in the last week, bringing our total to 77. Since our launch, volunteers have had nearly 29,000 customer interactions at key transit hubs such as Waterfront and Vancouver City Centre, as well as at major events like Celebration of Light, Pride, and the PNE. Our transit volunteers help enhance our customer experience by adding a welcoming presence to the transit system, answering questions, and helping to direct riders during really busy community events. Next slide, please. Presented by TransLink, there have been 6 car-free day festivals across Metro Vancouver this summer, with 3 new municipalities joining in on the festivities. Car-free days were celebrated in Surrey, New Westminster, North Vancouver, Commercial Drive, Main Street, and West End. And there were over 385,000 attendees across all 6 events, with really impressive turnouts at Main and Commercial. And New Westminster also had a really fantastic turnout, particularly given it was its first ever one of these events. It's also worth noting that at these events, over 7,000 people took the car-free pledge, committing to visiting their neighborhoods in an environmentally sustainable way and leaving that hassle of finding parking or paying for gas at the door. Car-free days are a terrific opportunity to highlight different approaches to how we use streets in our communities, what we prioritize, and how we could advance people-first streets. And so thanks to everyone who came out to these great events. Next slide, please. As part of our customer experience plan, we've opened up a new customer service center at Waterfront Station with direct access to 2 SkyTrain lines, C-Bus, multiple bus routes, West Coast Express, and Handy Dart pickups or drop-offs. Waterfront Station is the only location on TransLink system which serves all modes of transit. And with this opening, the current Compass Customer Service Center at Stadium Chinatown Station has permanently closed. So please note that the lost property office does remain in its current location at Stadium Chinatown. But this new location opened last Friday. So far, the response has been overwhelmingly positive. As our ridership continues to rebound and grow, this facility really opens the door for us to make more meaningful connections with our customers. Next slide, please. I also want to touch on our recruitment campaign because we're making big moves to shape the future of regional transportation, but we can't do it alone. Right now, we have nearly 300 positions available across the TransLink enterprise to meet the needs of our growing region. And we're connecting with qualified candidates to share what it's like to work at one of BC's top employers. Some of the initiatives we currently have on the go include a marketing campaign across digital media, radio, and print that started September 20th and will be running for the next few weeks. We have teams out engaging with candidates at all TransLink outreach events this fall. Throughout September and October, we're also participating in various Work BC's webinars, which will target specific jobs within the organization. And we're hosting open houses at BCRTC for skilled trades positions and at CNBC for transit operators. And as you've seen, our employees are a passionate, dedicated team, and we're excited to continue to grow that team. Next slide, please. Before closing, I too would just like to take a moment to thank Mayors Cote and Froese for their contributions on the board. We are so grateful for your commitment and dedication to really fostering a region that's built on transportation excellence. And I want to wish you the best from the TransLink family as you move on. Thank you all so much for your time today, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Any questions for Kevin in regards to his report? All right, well, seeing none then, I'm going to invite Mike Richard up to, well, not up, onto the screen to make his presentation about BC Rapid Transit Company. So the floor is yours, Mike. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lorraine. Good morning, everybody. Next slide, please. So here are the topics I'll provide some highlights on with the board today related to SkyTrain. Next slide, please. In Q2, our last time injury results were more in line with what we've seen over the past year. We had fewer injuries and lower long-term injury rates, as you can see from the chart above. Q2 saw about a 50% improvement over Q1, although we did still have 8 claims accepted by WorkSafe, which is something we continue efforts to improve on. On the positive side, though, we had 0 injuries in April, which was our best month since January 2019. And big congratulations go out to our guideway and railborne equipment departments, 2 of our more industrial-based work sites, for reaching 350 days with no long-term injuries in those departments. Next slide, please. For the quarter, our passenger injury rate was slightly higher than target, with 24 injuries, mostly related to trips and falls on stairs and escalators, although we also had some falls caused by trains emergency braking due to track intrusion alarms. We have a passenger injury task force, which continues to meet and review issues and trends quarterly. We are developing initiatives that will help address some of these issues that we're seeing frequently. Right now, we're just dusting off and revising our winter safety campaign. We're developing a new campaign focused on escalator safety, and we're reviewing the station designs currently in the extension stations coming up to see what features we might be able to add that would help reduce trip, slips, and fall events. Next slide, please. Looking at our on-time performance, Q2, we achieved 95.7%, which is below our target of 96.5%, and similar to our performance in Q1. We had 14 delay events between 16 and 30 minutes, which was our lowest number in this category over the last 3 quarters. However, these incidents are comprised of 6 train mechanical issues, 4 medical emergencies, 2 track issues, and 2 trespassing events where people entered the track area. For major delays over 30 minutes, we had 12 events, including a train dislodgement near Scott Road, 3 track switch issues, 2 power-related issues, 2 extended medical emergencies, 2 objects falling into the track, 1 extended trespasser in the track area, and 1 train door problem. Our scheduled service delivery rating was pretty much on target for the quarter, finished at 99.64 scheduled service delivered, with our target being 99.7. Next slide, please. Turning now to ridership. We had over 20.8 million boardings in Q2, well above the 17 million boardings from the previous quarter. As of June, ridership was at 70% or 72% of pre-COVID boardings, with over 14 million more boardings than this time last year. So positive indicator that we're recovering steadily from the lows of 2021 when most COVID restrictions were in place. Looking ahead to Q3, we're expecting ridership to surpass Q2 as the province further eases COVID-19 restrictions and the return of many large-scale events like Canada Day, the Celebration of Lights, the Pride Parade, P&E, several sporting events and concerts. Next slide, please. On the maintenance side of business, we did some heavy duty grinding as we do every year. We contract with a heavy duty rail grinder. We operated it over 106 kilometers over a 12-week period. We only had planned to do 80, but we were able to retain this equipment for an extra few weeks. And rail grinding is pretty important to us, both for maintaining the rail in a state of good repair, but also it's a very positive influence or rail noise inherent with steel wheels operating over steel rails. Our escalator availability was at 94.2% for the quarter, which was better than our target of 93. We were also able to switch out 10 track switch motors, 2 full track switch assemblies, and 3 partial track switch replacements. New running rail was installed in the Broadway to Main Street area, And we completed noise damper installation in the Joyce and Nanaimo area. The next phase of the noise damper project will be done in the Nanaimo to Broadway area coming up. Next slide, please. Overall, our capital and major projects are progressing well. There's been quite a bit of progress in OCC2, our new control center. Utility work has been completed. Forms for the building's foundation has begun. And as you can see in the top left photo, the distinct oval building structure is starting to take shape. So this is where it gets exciting. We start to see things happening. The new maintenance facility and shops being built at ONC1 near Edmonds continued with the installation of exterior cladding. The roof was completed on the guideway shop, and construction work to fit out the interior has also begun. The new train assembly continued at Alstom's Quebec manufacturing plant. Water testing was successful on car 1, and car 1 is actually expected to move to Alstom's Kingston, Ontario plant later this year for interior installation. Manufacturing of cars 2, 3, and 4 is well underway, and production of the train trucks or the wheel set assemblies is also commenced. I'm also happy to report that the Expo Line escalator replacement project is now completed. In total, 37 escalators were replaced on the Expo Line, introducing heavier duty units to handle the current and future volumes of users throughout the system. Next slide, please. One of our notable major projects this year was phase 2 of the Skybridge horizontal and vertical expansion joint replacement project. This was completed this past summer following phase 1, which was completed last summer on the Surrey side. This year, our focus was on New Westminster, and it required us to have 2 full 7-day shutdowns where the work was done. The time required and the complexity of the work necessitated the need for single tracking over those 14 days, and we were able to maintain a 20-minute headway throughout, but we were able to get this priority work done. This work completes the Skybridge project. Our next major state of good repair project will be replacement of the other expansion joints near Scott Road Station, beginning in October this month, or next month, I should say. This will also require some extended periods of single tracking, but every effort is being made to minimize disruptions to our customers. Next slide, please. And lastly, I'd like to introduce you to one of our facilities maintenance employees, Todd Granger. In late spring, over a 2-week period, Todd was personally involved with 3 very serious medical incidents, which saw him provide life-saving CPR on more than one occasion. This ultimately helped to save the lives of 3 people. Unfortunately, responding to incidents like this is more common with our frontline station attendants and field supervisors who do a great job. But for one of our maintenance people to be involved is uncommon, and truly it's a testament of his situational awareness, his training, and ultimately his character to help others when he's called upon. Great work, Todd. And that concludes my report. Thank you very much.
Mike, thank you very much for your report. I appreciate you highlighting the slips and trips, although we haven't started to see too much rain yet. It's coming, yes. And we want to keep everybody safe on our system. I also want to thank you personally for stepping in and acting as our president for the time that you have, and really appreciate all the additional work that you've undertaken to take care of and steward PCRTC. So thank you.
It's been my pleasure.
Yeah. Any questions for Mike in regards to his report?
Yes.
Marcella.
Thank you,
Oh,
Chair.
sorry, I didn't see Andy. Sorry.
Oh, Andy,
Marcella.
would you like to go first, Andy?
No, after you, Marcella.
No, I can't see because of the orange background. Your hands up are almost, anyway, I'll watch closer. I'll watch closer.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for your report, and I would echo our chair's remarks, and thank you so much for having stepped in and the excellent stewardship you've taken over the business. We really appreciated that. I'd also like to congratulate Todd Granger. That's amazing, and thank you for bringing that to our attention. I just want to ask a question around the rail grinding and turnouts and other work you're doing on the track. Can you tell us anything about complaints about noise? Has this reduced complaints, hopefully eliminated complaints? How are we doing on that front?
We continue to receive complaints, and in fact, Q2, Q3, generally we tend to see spikes because of the warmer weather and people out on decks and balconies and the like. So one of the reasons why we bring the heavy grinder in is specifically for that purpose, to address some of the rail corrugations that generate the noise. And likewise, some of the switch replacements, as they wear down, the trains hit them harder and they bang them harder, which generates more noise. So it's an ongoing thing. We have to keep doing it. We do have a couple of two smaller grinders that are being manufactured right now. We're in a bit of a delay in their delivery. But when we get those, we'll use those to address hotspots as they come up, and we can go out and address specific areas. But we have, I'm going to say 3, 4, 5 areas where we consistently receive complaints, where we've got towers that have been built next to the guideway. And through analysis and everything else, we've learned that the higher you go, counterintuitively, the louder the noise. And so we're focusing on those areas, and we're trying different things like friction modifiers as a means to reduce some of the noise dampers I mentioned, as a means to see if that has any positive effect as well. But grinding is probably the most important thing that we can do, that and replacing the switches as they approach end of life.
Thank you very much, Mike. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Andy.
Thank you, Chair. And Mike, I too pass on my thanks and for the work in stepping up there. Mr. Skytrain, been there since they laid the first rail, so glad to see the grinding them at last. I've got a comment and a question. In your report, I just want to compliment BCRTC with their work with the BC Centre for Women in Trades. It's not something that gets front and center, but I think offering opportunities to women and others to bring them into the business not only helps our business, but also helps diversify our workforce as well. So I encourage everyone over there to keep up that good work. But my question, Mike, I was also going to ask about the noise, but about the escalators. There's 2 points there. You said you're above target, the target 93% hit 94.2% of escalators. But also we've now got the replacements coming in. Can we expect the target percentage to go up with the new elevators in location?
That is most definitely our hope, Andy. We're in a lot of cases we're still in warranty and we're burn-in issues and the like, but the expectation is that we've got new, up-to-date, more state-of-the-art equipment. So, the expectation is it's going to perform better.
Do you have a number in mind of where we might hit? I know it's, we talk about in the 90% and those are good numbers, but if you're the person at that station and it's not working,
right,
the other 90% really don't count. So I'm just wondering what kind of targets we may expect to reach in the future.
To be honest, I've not been involved in any discussions there, Andy, but I can bring that back for the next meeting.
Yeah, I think I'm just, I'm channeling my Kevin Desmond thing with the escalators. I know it was a pain of his life. So anyway, thank you. And again, thanks for the work you've done and congratulations to Todd as well.
Thank you.
Sarah.
Thank you, Lorraine. I just wanted to, again, like the others, congratulate you, Mike, on your safety stats and the improvement on the lost time. That's a hard thing to accomplish, and it's really good to see the trend at BCRTC. It takes everybody in the organization working together to get there, so congratulations. I also really like that you brought forward the story about Todd. It's great to see a personal story and to see, just one of the heroes that does work at TransLink, and there are many. So thank you for that personal story. And I just want to thank you. I've known you for a long time, and your ongoing service to the organization has been exemplary.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Sarah. So I don't see any further questions. So we're going to invite Mike McDaniel now to speak on behalf of CMBC. So welcome, Mike. And we all have your report, but we're looking forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, Madam Chair, members of the board, and members of the public watching. Happy to bring the report to you today. Next slide, please. So you see the agenda there. I will start with safety first, talk about HandyDart. There's actually a few operations updates to give, and then end with our little focus on our people. Next slide, please. So as we've just finished up another long hot summer, I wanted to just start by talking a little bit about climate and climate resiliency. Recently, we've adopted the TransLink action plan strategy that will then build into the climate action plan that we're all involved in working on. Just noting the first steps in this plan is identifying the hazards. You see them there: temperature, precipitation, and extreme events, which we've had many of. The second is developing the plan. So we want to ensure our infrastructure and operations adapt as climate changes, and we want to focus on business continuity and safety. As we mentioned before, we last year had a variety of events from heat, rain, flooding, tornadoes, and snow. And speaking of snow, as you see in the bottom right-hand corner there of your screen, it is snow prep time. Mike just mentioned that too on SkyTrain. We're well underway because that season is coming. Despite the hot weather of late, it will come sooner than we think. We've made a lot of headway with our partner municipalities, as well as our vendor for snow removal. So we're ready for that. Despite it doesn't seem like it's coming anytime soon, it definitely will. Next slide, please. So just an update here on HandyDart. Wanted to know that TransLink successfully negotiated a 2-year operating agreement extension with First Transit. So that they will continue to be the HandyDart operator going forward. The contract runs from July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2024. And just talking a little bit about ridership, we are seeing continual growth. We are a couple percent above, getting to 67% in July, a little bit above earlier in the year. Also, taxi trips are up to about 17% in July as well. That is also up a little bit more than earlier in the year. That's pretty common in the summer months that taxi trips go a little bit higher. Also for July, our on-time performance at HandyDart is 91%. That's a little bit lower, and that's also common in the summer months a little bit than earlier in the year. Next slide, please. Waiting for the next slide. There we go. Okay, so this is actually kind of an interesting update here. This is one of our operational updates. What we did to improve service reliability and customer experience is we selected some routes that we ran on 3 corridors, 1 per week each. You see them there on your screen: SFU to Production Way in Burnaby, UBC to Broadway in Vancouver, and Hastings Street from Commercial to downtown Vancouver. What we did is we had transit supervisors right there on the ground in these corridors, coordinating with TCOM and of course transit operators as well, monitoring and making adjustments real time to a number of things. We do have a lengthy report that we're preparing after collecting a lot of data, but I'm just going to give the board a couple of very preliminary updates. What we saw was that transit supervisors were able to make real-time adjustments, and it made a difference to our customers. First and foremost, we monitored headways between buses, and consequently, we decreased the amount of bus bunching through those corridors. What that meant, of course, is that buses could adhere more to their posted schedules, and an obvious statement, but when we do that, we obviously create a more positive customer experience. Next steps are we'll complete the report and have more ideas on permanent changes that we'll do in those 3 corridors. And then probably more importantly, we are working on our next version of this pilot. We had a lot of success, and we fully plan to continue it as we go through the next number of months into next year, and we'll be able to report back more learnings from that at a future meeting. Next slide, please. So just a little bit of a look here at transit security. These are our new vehicles, and you'll start seeing them soon on the roads. This is our new hybrid Ford Explorers. This is our first time doing hybrids. We have 5 coming in at the end of this year, 4 more in the early part of next year. And it's going to obviously help us minimize our environmental footprint, as well as maintain a state of good repair for that vehicle fleet. It is a new look, or what we call livery, that you see in the photo there, and it's meant to distinguish between transit security, transit supervisors, and transit police for our customers out on the road, as well as our staff. Next slide, please. So mentioned earlier, we were happy to be part of the return of the Honda Celebration of Light this summer. It was on hiatus for obvious reasons since 2019. And in fact, on Wednesday night, the middle night of the fireworks, our executive team had a modified Transit Tuesday that I've told the board about before. We did a Transit Wednesday night, and we helped out our teams down just outside of Burrard Station, as well as through Robson and Denman. And across all of those nights, the crowds were very large. We did almost 300 buses dedicated to that service. All totaled across the 3 nights, we moved about 210,000 customers to and from the event. And just seeing it on the ground, I want to say kudos to the entire team. It is a large undertaking in addition to running the rest of the system at the exact same time. So kudos to our team for everything they did for that event again, and we were happy to see it come back. Next slide, please. So just moving again to our people that I mentioned, we have created and filled 2 new positions that focus directly on improving the employee experience at CMBC. We welcomed Ragini in June and Katie in May. Ragini is our new EDI program manager. Over the first few months, she's focused on engaging with employees, collecting and listening to feedback around the needs around EDI. She aims to increase EDI education opportunities available at CMBC, and also add EDI education and dialogue to meetings and events. One of our first educational projects, which is coming up very soon, very excited to see that, is actually delivering a workshop series to our senior management team at CMBC on how to develop an EDI lens in leadership. Katie is our manager of psychological health and wellness services. And similarly, Katie has been out and about around from Hamilton to Richmond to Port Coquitlam, talking to staff and engaging with them. Her first focused area is raising awareness on how to recognize when employees' mental health is negatively affected and how to access available support. To put this into action, she actually created a brochure for employees who are on leave to clarify the return to work process, to ensure they understand each step and so they feel supported along the way so they can get back to work. Naturally, I've just mentioned a couple of parts of these initiatives. They've just started. I look forward to bringing some more reports to the board at future meetings. Next slide, please. And just to close, some kudos to our staff who took time out of their day-to-day, busy day-to-day, and attended the recruiting tent at the fair at the PNE this past summer. Here we have Jasmine and Jessica from our very talented maintenance engineering department. They were on hand to talk to prospective employees. And as I mentioned in the last meeting, the last board meeting, we are hiring a lot of people, and every little bit helps. And so this recruiting tent was a huge hit. We'll continue to work with our teams and TransLink HR to ensure that we have all of our resources in place. Things are going well, but we have still some work to do to meet the challenges ahead. And Madam Chair, that is my report. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Mike, you've been a busy guy, and I see that Andy Ross has a question for you.
Thanks for the report, Mike. A couple of things. There was a lot in there for sure. So I'm just going to touch on a couple. I just want to compliment CMBC on the EDI initiatives. As I said previously to Mike Richard, the work with the women in trades, I think, is great. The work on the truth and reconciliation, it's some really good stuff as well. But I also wanted to comment part of your report and your written report on the apprenticeship program. I'm really supportive of seeing this one. It alleviates the needs for CMBC, but we see such a shortage in skilled trades. It doesn't seem to be the professions that people are turning to. To see an emphasis put on this and bringing people through obviously helps the organization, but it's a great career move and a great initiative. I do have one question that is completely minor, but I couldn't help noticing in the report when you were talking about the Braille signs, which is a great initiative. I was fortunate to be at the launch of that. I just wonder why, when we talk about the Braille stops, it says there's 8,400 stops, but on the accessible stops, it says there's only a total of 8,234. Why is there a difference in bus stops? I'm just wondering why that is.
It's a great question, Andy. I don't know the answer to that, but what I would imagine is that it came from two different divisions. Our bus stops, being a little bit facetious, but our bus stops actually probably by not that amount, but they change all the time because of bus stop balancing, different expansion areas, different contraction areas. That's probably just coming from two different worlds of talking about what they work on for bus stops. But thanks for the flag. We'll get to the bottom of that.
Well, I've just been going around telling people I knew exactly how many bus stops we had in Metro Vancouver, and no one questioned it. So thanks, Mike.
Yes, I'm sure you had a third different number too. Thanks, Andy.
You could say approximately in front of your number then, Andy, and I think you'd be good. Mike, changing bus stops around isn't good for our customers. They don't like that. So please stop doing that as much as possible. All right.
We will.
Jen.
Thank you. Thank you for the report, Mike. Just regarding the rainbow wrapped bus and the increased transit during the fireworks and the bike bus pilot, I just wanted to commend all of those things and thank you for highlighting examples of how public transit really makes our community so much more livable and connected and really a lot more vibrant and fun. So shout out to that. I also wanted to highlight the report's discussion of the commitment to achieving 2% increase in wheelchair accessible bus stops each year. And so in curiosity, I reviewed the year-over-year change as reported to the board from 2019 to now in regard to the percentage of wheelchair accessible bus stops. And it's great to see that gradual increase. And I note that if the 2% aim can be achieved, that may mark an acceleration in progress. And so I just wanted to note that I'm very keen on receiving the update next year and really wanted to thank you and your team for your commitment for making efforts and increasing accessibility. And then just a quick question, also in your written report, in regards to the heat exposure control plan and the introduction of or installation of rather fans in the operator compartments for trolley buses, noting the lack of air conditioning and some of the airflow challenges that trolley buses may experience in high heat. I just wondered, are fans available in the public compartments of the buses as well, or is that something under consideration? Thank you.
Thanks, Jen, for all the comments. I'll pass that along to our teams as well. In regards to the fans, we do actually, when you think about it in the bus area, we obviously have, if it's all door boarding, we have all doors opening up every stop that we stop at least the front door. We do have windows cracked, and we do have a ventilation system in that area. One of the challenges we've had with the driver compartment over the years is when we've actually installed the hard operator barriers, it ended up kind of closing in a little bit more of the airflow. And so we've had to do a little bit more to the operator compartment, and all of our trolley buses do have the hard barriers, and so have a little bit more of an airflow problem because of that. The good news is that we're actually in 2023, we're officially starting the replacement of the trolleys. And in 2026 and 2027, all of those trolleys, 262 of them, will be replaced, obviously with air conditioning, with a variety of other customer amenities as well. So we're getting there, but we're very conscious of the heat and doing our best to mitigate that while we add our AC buses to our fleet as we go forward.
Thanks, Mike. Marcella has a question for you.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Mike, for your report. Appreciate it as always. Lots of great information and highlights. My question relates to the operator assaults. I mean, one assault is too many, and I don't need to tell you that. I must say I'm surprised that they continue at this level, given the permanent barriers erected on many buses and trolleys, as you identified, and given even the temporary barriers that have been erected throughout COVID. Can you just comment on that? I just so continue to be disappointed in seeing this occurring.
Yeah, thanks, Marcel. It's a great question. I share your disappointment, and you're right. One assault is one too many, and we do spend a lot of time talking about this. We have a variety of things that we, of course, do that we're in control of. Things like training of our staff. I've mentioned to the board before. Last year, we started our first in a very long time one-day refresher training, and a lot of that pertain to safety, safe driving, as well as violent incident prevention. There's a whole program in our new operator training for that as well. We did put all the barriers up as you mentioned. This is also a bit of a societal factor. We're less in control of that part of the control measures. What I can tell you though is that specifically for those hard barriers, any assaults that are occurring, just by definition, are less severe because those barriers are in place. So even though something is happening, and again, I'm not trying to diminish that particular event for one of our staff members, but the operator barriers are working. It may not be a prevention type of thing, but the severity is decreasing. So we do have a plan for additional barriers as we go forward. Obviously, every new bus that comes has a barrier on it, but we do have a plan for early 2023 to add more hard barriers throughout the fleet. And we will continue to work with other groups like municipalities on a lot of their kind of violent incident prevention programs as well. It is something we focus on all the time though, Marcel. So great question. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that information, Mike.
Thank you very much, Mike, for your report. I don't see any other questions, so I appreciate everything. The written reports for all of the subsidiaries have been excellent, and so I know the board members appreciate all of that information. So we're going to move on now to Chief Jones, and Chief, you have your presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, and happy to present on behalf of the Metro Vancouver Transit Police here today. Next slide. One of the things just to highlight here is we look at some of our crime stat reporting, we're going to see numbers that show significant decreases in areas such as rates of crime against persons and property. And part of this, just as an explanation to yourselves, is when the ridership dropped, our crime rate is based on the number of passenger boardings. So when COVID hit and passenger levels dropped, we didn't see crime. We had reported this before. We didn't see crime dropping at the same rate. Therefore, our crime rate spiked up significantly based on that formula. When we look at it now, as passenger levels are coming back, we're seeing them reducing. Call volume is running about the same, actual number of events and increases, but however, they're returning to what we would see as the pre-pandemic levels. So they're not higher, but they're returning to the pre-pandemic levels. This includes, and I see with Marcello's last question there, I'd point out, even issues such as assaults on drivers or operators, they're actually down by more than 50%, and they continue to maintain that level. There was a target goal a couple of years ago to get it below 100, and we ended up landing in about 50 a year range. And the severity, as Mr. McDaniels has said, has been less severe in terms of it. There are still issues that we address, which includes addressing the opioid crisis, the substance addiction issues, and I can indicate that the provincial government is providing funding once again to all police agencies to train and carry naloxone to work as an assist in people's safety and health on this matter. And that would include on the night of one of the celebrations of nights with members were riding the West Coast Express train back on the one Saturday. We're able to revive an individual on that occasion. Next slide. So we always keep this as a campaign that is around, and of course, as our crowds came back up, there was a significant decrease in the number of sexual assault or sexually related offenses that occurred during the pandemic. Again, with lower ridership, it appeared that either the opportunity to inappropriately touch or grab onto somebody was reduced by the amount of space that was created within the system. We feel and have seen that some of the numbers have started to climb back up in terms of this. So we still have this campaign. We take any type of assault, and particularly anything related to sex offending, inappropriate touching, contact with somebody, take it very seriously. And we have maintained the campaign you see on the right is actually done in conjunction with a group of high school students 2 years ago who we work with to talk to them about what are the issues, what are the concerns that students may have, and to create a campaign to address those matters. Next slide. So this year, for the first time, and I'll speak a bit about it as Mr. McDaniels has about the Canada Days and the Celebration of Lights events. The Metro Vancouver Transit Police ran its own emergency operations center for the nights of the Celebration of Lights. And it's not our own. This is where we bring in BCRTC, CMBC, other parts of the organization into the room so that communication, coordination, and planning is kept up throughout the evening there. July was a particularly busy month for us with the Celebration of Lights, the return of Canada Day, and several other concert features that occurred. On each of those, we saw the return of a large number of people to the Celebration of Lights. But if I look at a significant event was Canada Day this year, we didn't just have activities in Vancouver. The activities were spread out through Vancouver during the day, who did not offer fireworks. There was Burnaby that had events by Patterson Station with a beer garden event that was occurring there. Both Port Moody and Coquitlam were offering events and activities that included fireworks later in the evening. And there was an event at Holland Park in Surrey. So as you can imagine, while we had significant people headed towards activities and events, they were also spread throughout the entire region. And they were moving back and forth, including going to one place for the beginning of the day and then heading out to another event later at night. There were no significant events. We were, as this picture would show you, the members were highly visible on the system and in the key areas. And again, a lot of our part is to make sure, we call it interdiction, to deal with matters ahead of time, such as those who might have alcohol or consuming alcohol on the system or about to cause any issues. Next slide. So this is just a great accomplishment by Constable Shalito on the right here. As you know, we have 7 canine bomb detection dogs working on the system. A lot of them are there for system resiliency. They help keep the system open. If a package or something is left behind, we can quickly clear the area and keep things moving along. They're also a preventative measure. We assist some of our jurisdictional partners, and it's other events that occur at or right on the transit line itself. And Constable Shalito there, just in the last month, competed at the national championships in Camrose, Alberta, and we can say we have the top explosive dog in Canada at this point in time. So it was, he won it, I'm going to say handily. He did very well. It's an extremely proud moment because you're not just competing with other police agencies, you're competing with border services, prison systems, you're competing in a very specific category across the country. So congratulations to himself. The canine section is trained under the guidance of Sergeant Gord McGuinness, who has about 30 years of police dog experience, and his experience and our success has now led to Gord's recognition and request for his attendance. In fact, next week he'll be attending the City of New York. He'll be working with the New York Police Department, Department of Transit, over there to train 30 dogs, very specifically, call them detection scent dogs for this purpose here. And he'll be working with both the New York Police Department and Homeland Security in assisting to provide training in that area, which makes it a very, I'm going to say, nice and complimentary recognition to not only the members, but the organization itself and what it has to offer. Next slide. A lot of this month, as we start to head back to school, return to universities and that, we spend a lot of time doing outreach and safety education in terms of it. So in partnership with groups such as ICBC, Transit Police, TransLink, the RCMP, some seniors groups, schools, you'll look at some of the campaigns we've been doing about looking at mobility, getting to and around, using the system, safe pedestrian access as the weather starts to change in terms of it. And that was included. We've also produced and submitted our report to the community for this year, which highlights many of the activities. What you see on the right there is Constable Jenny Chung and Constable Marco DeTrollo, who look after the Coquitlam and Burnaby areas combined. And they're very big partners with ICBC about safe transit, safe pedestrian in and around our major transit hubs. Next slide. So again, in the messaging areas, we spent a lot of time this year, both with from university to elementary schools, talking about back to school, safe transit tips, how to get there, how to safely use the system. We talk about if there is an issue, what they can use, from texting to talking to somebody. We view that safety and security it's not just a policing matter entirely. There are SkyTrain attendants, bus operators, candle line attendants. There are safety measures such as push buttons or strips and texting. And we look to educate all of the kids and new kids who might be new to transit as we expand and the school system comes back up, how to transit safely to and from. Next slide. So this slide here is part of our Indigenous Relations program. We know that we have the Blue Eagle Community Cadet program, and once a year there is a pulling together canoe journey. This isn't just for our cadets, it involves First Nations communities around the province. Police and other peace officer type organizations are heavily involved in this. It's about a week of paddling and working together, going to different locations. A lot of police communities, or not police, I'm going to say Indigenous communities around where the journey will be taking it. This year it was up on the Shuswap Lake area. It has been in other places such as out on the ocean or coming down the Fraser River. So it is selected so that people can connect with the communities in the given area. It's quite a commitment. There are up to 20 youth who we take, supervise, and provide services and supplies to. And on terms of it, you're looking at the kids in the canoe there. Some of the kids, they tent along the way the entire time, and obviously appreciate the members who are involved in this program and work with them not only during the year with the Blue Eagle Community Cadet program, but take the time to participate in these significant events where they spend a lot of, I'm going to say, quality time, more bonding with the youth on a personal level, when you could spend 6 hours a day canoeing out on the ocean, lake, or river. Just a note too on our Blue Eagle Community Cadet program. We started in Vancouver. Last year, we expanded into the city of Surrey. This year, we've had a request from the city of New Westminster and interest expressed by the city of North Vancouver for this. So the program is looking to expand. These agencies where expansion is being requested. We talked to them. There's a need for them to supply resources, location to train, meet, and some of it, and we can certainly assist with the programming. But really, congratulations to the members who brought this forward, Constable Kirk Rattray and Sergeant Cheryl Simpkin, for the success it's garnered, and what we can see is the rapid request for expansion from other agencies who have been exposed to it and see the effect it's having. Next slide. So this is part of it too, as we look at making sure and look kind of on the EDI part of it. We make sure that our members, our female members here, this is the International Association of Women Police Officers. They had a conference in Niagara Falls this year. We had several members attend. It is quite a significant event as they get to meet with other policing leaders, female policing leaders, discuss, I'm going to say, new initiatives and ideas that occur. And part of our team will be working with the International Women's Group to bring this conference to Vancouver, probably not next year. I believe it's scheduled for New Zealand, but in the year after or the following year is to bring it here. But it is important, and this isn't just for senior police officers. This is for anyone from your newest constable to a chief constable to attend. And it's gained significant momentum over the last few years and is well attended. And the information that's provided there, they speak very highly of upon their return. Next slide. So also just to note some of the kind of recognition that's going on of the work we've done, and in particular, this is Sergeant Julian Poncion. He has been invited to the International Conference on the Observation, Analysis, and Prevention of Insecurities. This is a international conference that is being held in Paris, France this year. They have invited Julian to attend as a speaker and a presenter. He'll be speaking about the creation of the volunteer program that started in the Waterfront station with transit police volunteers, how it has gone to date, how it was formed, the role of a volunteer within the transit system when they're attached to a policing agency, what their goals are, what their mandate is as they move about. And, Julian has, first of all, a lot of credit to creating the program and getting it up to speed. He's since moved on, and Constable Miles Teitelbaum is now running them. But we're really proud of the volunteers that they've done. And as we've seen over the past 2 years, the training he's given them, the observation skills, has led to the saving of at least 2 lives where volunteers recognize the signs of an overdose and were able to intervene and provide assistance and get aid to the individual before something more serious had happened. So really proud that they reached out to us and Julian was able to go. Next slide. Just a touch on, I just touched on the volunteers there. And the one thing we are doing is that you may be aware, and you hear at times in policing, that there are concerns over delays in non-emergency call handling and that. This is just a reminder that we do have our own dispatch and communication center here for the transit police. As part of it, we obviously we continue to recruit. Our staffing needs in here. But one of the things we've seen an increase in is the number of individuals who are using text to us, because we do live texting. We consider it a very key part of safety on the system as individuals. It would not be unusual for someone to have a phone in their hand and be typing on it to be able to discreetly send a message to us. That service is monitored live 24 hours a day as we're operating there. And we've been able to successfully maintain a very efficient communication center, although we do continue with recruiting into that area and look at plans as the system goes to expand down Broadway and then eventually into Langley as to what the needs will be there. Next slide. Like everybody else, we are in recruitment, talent acquisition phases. We do open settings where people can book. We have no shortage of new applicants coming to us and filling up the sessions very early and quickly. Really just, if you have a dog who's part of your recruiting team, you'll always get good reviews at the end of the day, and you'll get them. We'll speak to the dog being the most important part, but I just want to give kudos to both the recruiting staff and other members who participate in talking to individuals about a career at the transit police. And I believe that is it, unless there are any questions.
Thank you, Chief Jones. I see that Andy has a question, but before he jumps in, I want to know if someone's going to try and steal our top winning dog.
No.
No.
We own the dog, right? So
I know, but
that's a big thing. Yeah, there was another dog there that finished in the top 10. We don't talk about that dog right now.
All right, Andy.
Thank you. Thanks for the report, Chief. A lot of good stuff in there, but one of the things that kind of drew my attention is something we're hearing about in the media a lot in society, and is issues around mental health. I notice on the numbers how they've increased, and in the report it talks about maybe it's a heightened awareness. But I wouldn't mind hearing your views on this, but also your views on, as we go forward, is there more things we can do? Because I expect this will be escalating in society at large, and we will see it in our system. But I don't quite know what the definition in your report of a disturbed person as opposed to the Mental Health Act is. So maybe if you could just clarify that, it would be useful.
Yeah, so for the purpose of the Mental Health Act, anyone we apprehend is somebody who is at risk of endangering their own life or safety. So that's kind of your mental health definition. And a disturbed person may be somebody who is acting with in a manner that you'll call them as being disturbed, right, or disturbing others, but doesn't necessarily all the time hit the requirements of a apprehension requirement. Like there's people who may act in a manner that is uncomfortable for others around them, and we may get called for service, but they're not acting in a manner that is going to cause harm to themselves or others in terms of it. And for the mental health, we continue to try to work, and we're working with two different healthcare providers, both Coastal Health and Fraser Health, to develop what we hope are better programming or referral methods into who can assist with the individual without having to take them to a hospital, who can assist in the early intervention of it. Some places such as Vancouver have a CAR 87. Surrey has a full-time mental health worker also working in their area. The challenges with us are, because we're so multi-jurisdictional, is either using the local resource or having to almost look at our own as we see the numbers increase in and around the transit system.
That was going to be my follow-up. Do you anticipate that may be an area that the transit police may be looking into as a sort of development in the future?
Absolutely, fully 100%. We are trying to establish the relationships with either or both. We'd like both health regions, or at least starting with one. And they are unique and different. In other words, they're not governed by the same boards or the same manner in degree. But I believe that we've seen, and there's a lot of requests for police to have either less involvement or greater access to different resources to address these matters. And they're all supported by police agencies throughout the Lower Mainland, is to try and find that alternate source of care as opposed to detaining somebody to go to the hospital in that manner there. So it is one of our goals, is to do that and hopefully strike a team. We recognize that we are looking at our data to see which regions we do track, because we go to so many different regional hospitals with individuals as to where it is, and could we even have a partnership with other agencies, say in the Tri-Cities, that would create a full-time resource that would be effectively used for the volume of what's occurring, with us partnershipping in that area, and then partnershipping in certain areas that have that resource already.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you. Andrea.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thanks for the report, Chief Jones. I was really happy to see, or maybe not happy, but important to see that sexual assault has been made a priority by the transit police. But I had two questions related to it. I'm interested to know how much you're tracking the gender of the victims of sexual assault. And the second was how much you're tracking gender-based violence that is not sexual assault.
So it's tracked on each file in terms of it. I don't have that data necessarily in front of me, but we would be tracking the gender of our victims in terms of it. And I believe the second question you had there was?
How much you're tracking gender-based violence that isn't sexual assault.
All violence now is being tracked. In fact, it's even being within the police reporting system. We're updating as police reports are written within that common prime system. There is a whole gender-based identity component that is being rolled out to make sure that all police agencies do it in the same manner. And it will allow us to also work on educating members on proper gender identification for the reporting purposes.
Right.
So we do internally. The externally, I would say most agencies do, but we do track that of all victims.
Okay, I think I'll be interested to see as it rolls out, but I think it will be a critical. I know that over the last number of decades, we've used sexual assault as sort of a cipher for gender-based violence, but in fact, not all sexual assault is against women, and not all gender-based violence is sexual assault.
Yeah, very, very, very true and accurate, and I appreciate that question. And so you're aware that the one thing that is unique, and we keep emphasizing this both to obviously the public as a whole, as a deterrent, and we talk about it with students and community groups we deal with. You know, sexual assault is not what we consider some, you know, where they believe it's got to involve, and I'm really kind of making it simple, like some really egregious violent act, right? There are actions of inappropriate touching, groping, and stuff like that fall into that category, and we simply encourage people to report it, right? Because then we can address it, and then we can deal with it. I'll always say to people here is that the one thing we talk about security in the transit system is there are a significant number of cameras located in different locations operated by different enterprises, buses, SkyTrain, even in the community, in that we have a highly successful rate of identifying those who are acting in an inappropriate manner towards people.
That is good to know. Thank you very much for your work in this area, Chief Jones.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And Chief Jones, to Andrea's point, I'm really encouraged to hear that the tracking and the reporting of all this information is being standardized across the agencies, so that then our information and our data is going to be more meaningful from a city and a regional perspective. So I think that's very positive as well.
Right.
So, Jen, I see has a question for you.
Just a comment, Chief Jones. I wanted to share that I had occasion over this summer to report a left package along the Canada line, and I did so by text to the 877777 and received an immediate, helpful, and very reassuring response that it would be attended to right away. And so really wanted to give kudos to your team with those text message responses and how helpful that was to be able to report something so easily and so quickly. Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you, Chief Jones, for your report. And we're going to move on to item number 7 on our agenda, which is our Finance and Audit Committee Chair report. I'm going to ask Sarah Clark to make her report. For the benefit of everybody here, you all know that we've had committee meetings over the last week and a half, 10 days. And so these are the reports from each of those committee meetings. So Sarah.
I can report what was on the agenda. We're moving into auditing season. So we reviewed our external auditor, KPMG, their audit plan for the upcoming audit. Per usual, on our agenda is a report from our internal audit and continuous improvement group. We also covered the safety program, which falls under the Finance and Audit Committee, and had an update on statistics and program plans. We talked about the rail expansion program, and we looked at resource capacity within the organization. We also covered the Pattullo Bridge and its current condition, and had an update of the 2022 investment plan. We also are moving into budget season. So the first step in that is looking at the key financial assumptions for the 2023 budget. And then the consent agenda had a number of different items on it, including an update on the Surrey Langley SkyTrain project and the Broadway subway project.
Sarah, thank you very much. Several of us were at that meeting. For those who weren't at that meeting, anybody have any questions for Sarah or one of the staff in regards to the report? All right, so seeing none, I'm going to then move to the Planning, Communities and Communication Committee Chair report, which is Mayor Jonathan Cote. So Jonathan.
Yeah, well, thank you, Chair. And the Planning Communities and Communication Committee met last week. Had a number of items on our agenda. I think quite consistent with all of our meetings this year. I think the discussion and reporting on the ridership recovery was the major committee item for discussion. And as we've seen in reports that are coming to our board meeting here today, and as has been presented, I think there's a lot of positive signs in terms of life coming back to our transit system, and some good growth throughout this year in transit ridership. The reports did also get into the different differences across the region, because the ridership recovery hasn't been uniform, and there are certain areas of the system that are recovering faster, and other areas that are recovering slowly, more slowly. I think overall there are some really encouraging signs, and as was reported by our CEO Kevin Quinn, our ridership recovery does continue to lead the country and have really good stats to come back. But I think on the other side, though, there is a recognition that some post-pandemic new realities are coming into place, and return to work, I think, is still very much in flux, but we can definitely see working from home is going to have a long-term, potentially permanent impact on transit agencies, and that we're never necessarily going to get fully back to the type of ridership patterns that we had before. It is interesting to note that some of the non-peak transit demand on weekends and during non-peak times seems to be recovering faster, and seems to be showing a different type of travel demand, which I think actually could be really positive for our transit system. So no doubt this is going to be a continued area to monitor there. But the committee even had a good discussion about how do we, once we kind of enter this period of new normal, at some point we're going to be just getting back to analyzing our transit ridership, as opposed to continually looking at the pandemic, and how do we make that shift, given that's been such a big focus on how we analyze transit ridership over the past 2 years. A few other reports were dealt with, and there's one in our consent agenda today, one relating to aligning with partner agencies. And I know we spend a lot of time focusing on the work and complex work we do at TransLink, but I think there's also recognition we're not an island on ourselves at TransLink. We have a lot of relationships and collaboration with other partner agencies. Namely, that's been highlighted in this report, a lot of the work that's done with individual municipalities with their transportation planning, in ensuring that their plans are coordinated with TransLink's plans and our service levels. Also, there's been a tremendous partnership between TransLink and Metro Vancouver in the development of the region's both long-range transportation plan and Transport 2050, and the regional growth strategy, Metro 2050. So, I think the report was really a good reminder to kind of really show the importance that TransLink really is working with a number of partnership agencies, and it's important that collaboration happens so that we can all be effective in our work. And then finally, on the communication side, the committee did get a report on the corporate reputation survey, and I think largely the results are positive and stable in terms of the public's perception of TransLink. And I think in many respects that reflects that we've been able to provide a pretty stable service during what I would say is an unstable period of time. And that is my report from the Planning Communities and Communications Committee.
Thank you very much, Mayor Cote. Your final report is that. So any questions for Jonathan in regards to his report? I guess with the lower numbers for back to work, it might be good for our climate, but not so good for our revenues for transit. So we're going to thank you, Jonathan, for that. And I'm going to move on to Marcella, who's going to give us a short report on the Human Resources and Governance Committee.
Thank you very much, Chair. We started looking at equity, diversity, and inclusion, EDI. I think you've heard that referred to several times already here today. We received a really good update. We are moving from beyond level 1, where you're just figuring out what's going on, to level 2, where we're actually improving, creating awareness, and collecting data where we can. The team currently is really focused on data. working from aggregated information as well as any internal surveys, wherever people self-identify, which is really helpful for us to understand what is going on in the organization. Most importantly, we're trying to understand how our employees feel about inclusion, not just what the statistics say, but how you feel about it. We had a lot of really good examples how training and awareness is so successful and the things that are occurring in all the divisions. And we've heard some of those examples from both Mike and Mike today about where they're seeing that occurring in their groups. So it was really great to hear. Turning to our regular HR report, we looked at our employee turnover, our corporate wellness, psychological health and safety. We looked at the future of work, how people are coming back into the workplace. We had an in-depth discussion around the current situation faced by all organizations around employees and the back to work situation and finding employees, which then took us to talent acquisition. We looked at our current strategies and how we needed to change some of those strategies. Our vacancy rate is not significantly changed. However, it is different in different parts of the organization. I think everybody knows, you read everything, there's a perfect storm out there in terms of employee acquisition and retention. And so we also then focused on retention strategies as well within the organization. And then for the board, we looked at what our annual process might be for evaluation, do it before Christmas, it's gonna come. And finally, we had several reports where we reviewed our standard processes, such as the code of conduct, privacy, and information issues. And so that was it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Marcella. Any questions for Marcella on her report? Okay, well, seeing none, I'm going to ask Karen Horcher, our chair of our Information Technology Committee, to provide a report on her committee. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Chair. So the committee held its third quarterly meeting in September, and consistent with past meetings this year, we received an update on the IT security program, as well as an update on the Enterprise Resource Planning Program, or the ERP program, which is one of the major IT initiatives for the organization. In addition, the committee also received an update on a number of other IT programs and technology projects that are currently underway throughout TransLink. And finally, the committee met with the internal auditor and subsequently held an in-camera meeting with the internal auditor as part of our normal governance practice. That is my report from the Information Technology Committee, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Karen. Sorry, I couldn't get off mute quick enough. Any questions for Karen in regards to her report? Okay, so hearing none, we're going to move to item number 11 on our agenda, which is the TransLink Safety and Health Policy report. So Kevin is championing this, but he's got his trustee Dorrit, who is our Director of Safety, Environment and Emergency Management that we had our safety minute from earlier today, who's going to provide us with a report, and we're to make a decision in regards to this.
Thank you very much, Chair. So as mentioned earlier in the meeting, the TransLink and its operating companies are fully committed to enhancing our culture of safety throughout our operations. It underlies everything that we do. And in March 2020, the board endorsed an enterprise safety commitment, which outlines our goals of eliminating injuries for both customers and employees, empowering our employees to be accountable and to work safely, and influence others to improve safety for the people across Metro Vancouver. Safety of employees is also a legal requirement under the WorkSafe BC Workers' Compensation Act and regulation. And both the employer and the employee has legal responsibilities to act safely. Each operating company has safety policies or procedures that are in place. And TransLink's corporate safety and health policy was adopted in 2021, and it is this key component to guide our safety actions within TransLink Corporate. It's a best management practice to update and annually review policy. And so this year's update has incorporated components of our enterprise safety commitment. So we really want to set those ambitious goals to continue to use data, prioritize safety and resilience into our infrastructure and fleet whenever we purchase those or develop them. Our employees are key, and we want to empower them through training. We want to cultivate and build those strong relationships with our employees and with our unions to drive safety culture. And safety is really what we are pursuing. And then we would also like to work with and encourage others and influence our communities. And you've heard many examples of that today with the different outreach to our communities, and really influence what they do within their jurisdictions. So we will continue to do our public safety campaigns, and we're in the process of developing the winter safety campaign, as Mike Richard had mentioned. And whenever possible, really leading our industry leader to make safety a component in anything that we purchase. So with that, it is recommended that the TransLink Board of Directors approves the amendments to the TransLink Corporate Safety and Health Policy as attached as attachment 2 to the report dated August 26, 2022, titled Update of TransLink Corporate Safety and Health Policy. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Dora. You just made my job so much easier by just setting up that resolution like that. So any questions for Dorit before we are asked to, so Harch.
Thank you, Lorraine. Dorit, my only question, first of all, this is fantastic. So thank you for this work, and I wholeheartedly endorse the policy. Do we have alignment between all of the other organizations and TransLink on this? For example, CMBC and BCRTC, are they also aligning their safety policies and procedures with this as well, or are there some differences between them?
Thank you. Great question. And we actually have worked and looked at all of the policies and procedures, and we are all aligned. So where required, the policies for the operating companies will be updated to include this type of language.
Excellent. Thank you.
That's great. Marcella.
Thank you. Dorit, I just want to compliment you and the whole team on these significant advances that you have been making on the safety front within the organization. I speak to Mike and to Kevin, to the whole team. There's been such an enormous amount of work, just elevating our focus on safety, real safety programs, real measurements and statistics, and real differences that we see. So I want to thank you for that work that you all do. And Dorit, right now you're the top dog. Thank you.
And Marcella, on that, I'm sure you're going to move the motion, and Harj is going to second the motion.
I move the motion.
Thank you, and Harj. And all in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed? So that's carried. Thank you very much. Dorit, thank you. Lots of kudos from board members, so well done.
Thank you, Chair. And just to stress what Marcella said, it is a huge team that is working on this. I may be here presenting, but all of the operating companies have very, very strong safety programs, and we are working together on that.
That's great. Thank you. All right, so we're going to move to item number 12 on our agenda, which is our Ridership Recovery Update Report. And Sarah Ross is going to make this presentation for us and answer any questions we may have. Sarah.
Thank you, Lorraine. I'll open it up actually, but I'm joined today by Teresa O'Reilly, who is our manager of system analytics, and she's going to present on the more detailed slides. But if we can go to the first slide, transit ridership continues to increase every week. Now, this slide was created 2 weeks ago, and as Kevin noted in his report, our ridership is now at 77% compared to the same week in 2019, which just so happens to have been the single busiest week of the year in 2019. So it's a tough comparator. Now, in real numbers, this means that there were 4.3 million journeys on transit in our region last week. As Mayor Cote mentioned, we've been watching the ridership numbers in September especially closely. Now, throughout the recovery period, when there are places to go, activities happening, people are using transit. We've seen that usage of transit by essential workers throughout the pandemic. We see clearly in our ridership when there are sporting events and festivals, when the weather is sunny, when students are back at school. And in some parts of the region, especially in Surrey and Langley, ridership is now at or greater than it was in 2019. What we've been watching for really closely in September, especially, is for what the return to office will look like. And we know that if more office workers start going back into the office more days of the week, we'll see that in our transit ridership. And, as we can see, the ridership is ticking up, and that's an indication that there has been an increase in office workers on the system. And you can also really see that in the West Coast Express number, which, of course, has been the kind of lowest, the part of our system that had the most hit in terms of ridership from COVID, because that was really predominantly, it's a service being used by people accessing jobs in the central business district. Now, it was at 38% when this slide was created, but it's now at 40% in the most recent numbers from last week. So that's a positive indication. And as the delegate noted at the beginning of the meeting, the system is busy. So while we don't have the extent of overcrowding that we had pre-COVID, while you're unlikely to be passed up by multiple buses and trains, as was commonplace pre-COVID, we have standing room only loads across the system, and we are experiencing some overcrowding, which is when buses are over targeted capacity. And Teresa will provide some further details about that. So passing it over to Teresa.
Thank you, Sarah, and good morning. And so it is definitely encouraging to be able to provide an update for you on some of these numbers and some more details. So the next slide, please. This is a particularly great number for us. We have 330,000 people taking transit on a weekday on average. And this is a number that's been growing since we started tracking it just in COVID. And it's also a significant number because we're a region of 2.6 million people. So we've got quite a significant number using transit on a daily basis. Next slide, please. And as you've heard, the overall travel demand in the region does remain lower, and it's affecting both transit and driving. And this is compared to pre-COVID. And so we're slightly lower in transit ridership recovery than forecast for this time period, which we were expecting to be at about 82% of 2019 ridership levels. So with customer recovery being just over 80% and ridership recovery is just under 80%, this suggests that customers are coming back onto the system, but taking fewer journeys on average. And looking at TransLink data, we're missing those office commuters, and both Sarah and Mercote have already mentioned this. So Sarah noted the jump up to 40% in ridership recovery of West Coast Express, the commuter train, and this is very encouraging. However, the weekday transit journeys, we can see the Monday to Friday, haven't recovered as well as the weekend journeys. Maybe we've got a few more activities on the weekend that people are doing, and transit is really accessible to it for them. But what we're seeing, it's really that decline in office commuting, and it's because people simply aren't going back into the office. And this office commuting is also impacting driving. So while vehicle volumes are at 100%, parking tax is at about 81%, and this suggests that the missing transit commutes have not been replaced with auto commutes. If transit trips were replaced by vehicle trips, traffic and parking sales tax would be well over 100%. So we just know that those trips are not happening, which is a lower travel demand. Next slide, please. We often look internally at our data and externally just to ensure that what we're seeing is is really the best information that we have. So we did look to some Google community mobility reports, and this external data also shows that office workplace trips are significantly lagging other trip purposes, such as grocery shopping and recreation. Next slide, please. Ridership recovery is not evenly distributed across Metro Vancouver. So we're seeing the highest ridership recovery rates above 80%, almost 100% or more in north and central areas of Surrey. In Vancouver Central Business District, and the Central Broadway corridor are on the lower range, about 55 to 60%. Recovery in Surrey neighborhoods is likely due to population growth south of the Fraser in recent years. And the lower recovery in Vancouver is likely due to the higher proportion of employees working from home all or part of the time. Most of the region's office space is located in downtown Vancouver and Central Broadway. Next slide, please. As you can see here, despite the lower recovery levels, downtown Vancouver still has the highest ridership in the region. Moreover, two neighborhoods that might have similar recovery rates could have considerably different ridership. Next slide, please. And the recovery levels vary throughout the day as well. So we're seeing lower morning and afternoon peak hour recovery on the weekdays. This pattern is consistent with a reduction in office commuting. The afternoon peak period recovery is slightly higher than the morning peak period because in the afternoon there are recreational and shopping trips in addition to those office workplace trips. And the weekend peak periods still have the highest transit ridership. And just as a bit of information, Fridays and Wednesdays are consistently the highest ridership on the system. Next slide, please. So travel demand has changed, and we've been reallocating service across the transit network to better match ridership patterns. On the bus network, we've reallocated 8% of service hours to different parts of the region. And we've also reallocated service hours between different times of day on the same route. Next slide, please. Both Sarah and one of the earlier delegates have noted overcrowding on the system. While there's no systemic overcrowding on modes other than the bus, we do have some overcrowding on the bus system, which has been increasing since ridership has returned over the past year, but it remains significantly lower than pre-COVID. And so we're monitoring our system very regularly and adjusting services with this to reduce overcrowding. And this is my final slide. Next slide, thanks. The current ridership recovery is slightly lower than expected, as I mentioned. However, if the ridership recovery levels remain stable going forward, we expect service and ridership to be well matched for 2023. As Mayor Cote noted, we are still comparing to pre-COVID. And as we look forward to 2023, we'll also be looking forward to shifting away from 2019 comparisons back to our standard metrics of growth. Thank you.
Thank you very much, both Sarah and Teresa, for your report. Are there any questions on the ridership report? I know that some of the committees saw this, so many of the board members have seen this already. But Andy, I see you have a question.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, it may be too early to tell, but are we seeing any change in travel patterns with the rise in gasoline prices?
It is too early to tell. Thank you for that question. But most of the change in the ridership that we've seen is the return to work and school in September, and not as much for the rising gas prices. However, if this continues, we would expect that we could see a 1 to 2% increase due to gas prices.
And when would you be able to judge that? When do you have enough data to find out if it is actually happening?
We'll be watching for the volume sales, fuel volume sales in the region to see how how well that is doing, as well as some of our vehicle volumes and of course transit. So we expect that it could take a couple of months to see if the change, if the impact of higher fuel sales or higher fuel cost has a more permanent impact on the behavior change.
Great. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Andy. I guess it could just be a little blip, and then if prices go down, people go back to their old patterns and waves, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't. Oh, Karen, I see you have a question.
Thanks, Chair. Sarah and Teresa, thank you for the report. I find it really interesting to see how our ridership is evolving and to see those changes that you've highlighted. given that we're doing a lot on getting people back on transit, I wondered whether we might have any messaging around choice of transit time for those who have the ability, recreational reasons, personal reasons, as opposed to workplace reasons, and whether we might sort of try something like an opposite advertising campaign where, you know, if there's some really good days to travel transit when it's not as crowded as other days, and maybe get some of those more reluctant travelers onto the system on those days that we consistently have slightly lower transit. So I just wondered if there's been given any thought to that, recognizing it might not be you two, but it might be an opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for your question. Certainly, pre-COVID, we had very active conversations about how, messaging people to shift so that they had better information, that if they just took their trip even 15 minutes earlier or half an hour earlier, they might have a really different experience. And we know that, people want to have information, and we do have the transit app with the capacity loading predictive information that people can access, because the more information people have about what's going on in the system, they can make informed decisions. Overall, I think while we do have some crowding and the system is busy, it's actually our peak periods are where our recovery is the lowest. And I think we for the most part, people will find space, and they're not having the kind of experience that they had pre-COVID. So I wouldn't think this is the time to do a big push on that, but absolutely we want to always make sure customers have all the information we can provide them to make choices.
Yeah, I was almost thinking of the opposite. Like if you're going to be running errands this week, Monday and Tuesday is the day to run them, as opposed to Wednesday and Friday. Something like that, that's a bit of a positive. I
think the positive I would say is that I would encourage people to feel that they can use transit any day of the week to run their errands, and that the service is there for them. And because there's a lot of different factors that drive when people make decisions about running their errands and other activities.
Fair enough. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Teresa.
Thank you very much. Andrea.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you to Sarah and Teresa for your always excellent reports on ridership recovery. This is a bit potentially out of the blue, so I'm not necessarily looking for an answer today, but would love to see one at the next ridership recovery update. It's the 1-year anniversary of the free transit being implemented for children 12 and under, and I would love to see some data on what we know about that. I mean, I know because they're not using a card of some kind, we may not know a lot, but whatever we do know, I think is good to baseline and just keep building on as the program continues to roll out.
Great question. It is the 1-year anniversary, and we could certainly come back to the board and the committee with some further discussion on that. As you note, you were limited in collecting data and have to do a lot of estimating on that, but we can certainly have a follow-up conversation.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right. So I don't see any further questions. Karen, your hand's still up, but I don't think that's intended, correct? Okay. Thank you. So we're going to move to item number 13 on our agenda, which is our consent agenda. And we have 2 sets of minutes and then response to public delegations, condition monitoring report for the bridge, Surrey Langley SkyTrain project update, and aligning the regional transportation interests. So any concerns with any of those, any questions? So seeing none, we can have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Andy, is that a motion to? Okay, yeah. Thank you. And Harj, see that? All in favor? Thank you. Okay, so on that note then, I don't see any further business for our meeting today. So I'd like to have a motion to adjourn the meeting. Thank you, Andy and Harj. Thank you. And all in favor? So the meeting is now adjourned, and thank you all to the public who took the time to join us for our meeting today, and we will adjourn